Welcome to the Longevity Lab. I'm Dr. J. Hidson, and today we're talking about something that I don't like to talk about, but it affects everyone, and that is weight. Let's be real, weight gain isn't just about how you look. It directly impacts your health, your longevity, and your energy. But the conversation around it is drowning in all these fad diets and misinformation and just unrealistic expectations. In your 40s, your 50s, or your 60s, and you're wondering why you're gaining weight, even though you really haven't changed anything, or why what used to work is not working anymore, this episode is for you. No fads, no gimmicks, just a science-backed strategy to build a stronger, healthier body. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Longevity Lab. I'm your host, Dr. J. Hidson. Today we are going to be talking about weight. First and foremost, let me just tell you, this is one of my least favorite topics ever to discuss. And here's why. Weight gain is, first of all, a very emotional subject for a lot of people, men and women. And so when you bring emotion into the equation, and then you also bring the myriad of opinions that there are out there, amongst our friends, amongst our relatives, and then now we have all of social media who has to have their say about what's the best way to lose weight. And there are so many gimmicks, there's so many fads, there's so many things that are flat out unhealthy. And then, who is right? And to be honest, I don't like contributing to the noise. I don't really want to be in that conversation. I don't even want to be included in that gamut. But here's the thing. I do care about longevity, and I care about quality of life. And there is no way around it. Obesity decreases your quality of life. Obesity is one of the major factors that influences longevity. Obesity is at the root of most chronic illness. So here I am, in that I don't want to be just another voice amongst the cacophony of noise talking about weight loss and the importance of weight loss and all that. But at the same time, how do we ignore it when it is such a pivotal factor to your ability to live long, lead strong? And we do know, the hard part about weight is because it is one of the few health issues that we wear so obviously on the outside. We all can see it. You see it when you look in the mirror. You feel it when you put your clothes on, and you have to walk in this body every single day. And it does. It impacts our mental health. It impacts our confidence. It impacts all of these different areas. So yes, I'm going to dive into it. I'm going to dive into it from a very different direction. And this is going to be about information and just real truth talk. I don't have a diet plan. I'm not going to sell a diet plan. I don't want to get into that world. I did do that world for a very, very short, brief amount of time, and it drove me crazy. So, in healthcare, we were working, within the clinic situation, we were working with weight loss. And here what was just drove me nuts. We'd have these different, patients come in, and they would have, 25, 50 pounds or whatever, overweight, whatever the situation. And they'd have all of these disease factors, from diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, cholesterol. All the big ones, you name it. And we would start putting them through the programs, doing what they need to do. And they'd be working their way through the system. And it would be incredible. Like, we would see late reversals. The diabetes, totally reversed. We would see the heart disease. We would see them come off of all these medications. We would see this huge transformation, in their blood work, in all of their labs, their energy levels, all of that. And then they would come to us and be like, yeah, but I only lost 20 pounds instead of 40 pounds. I'm unhappy. And that was just such a difficult experience for me because, they were missing the whole point. The whole point is about getting to healthy. And the healthier and healthier you are, your body will continue to mold itself into its healthiest form. You got to be a little bit patient. It's been 3 months, and we reversed massive disease processes. Give it a second. The body, like when the body is in the process of healing, letting go of its fuel source, fat is a great fuel source. Letting go of that, it's going to be one of the last things that happens. The body has to trust you in order to let go of its life preserver. And its life preserver is, that ring of fat that it keeps around your abdomen. It keeps that there in case of an emergency. If she's not paying attention, and goes off and gets sick, we got to have some fuel to keep her going. So that's the reason why I've become almost embittered about this particular topic. But early on, I just want to go ahead and get the information out there so we can keep referencing back to these recordings, and then we can kind of move on into the real dynamic conversations that I'm hoping that we'll be able to have. And I promise as we go through, I've got some amazing people who have very different perspectives on ways in order to, get healthier. And in that process of getting healthier, allowing your body to slim its way down and to release this unhealthy fat. And a lot of just different wonderful, beautiful techniques that are incredibly healthy and it contribute to your overall happiness. But for right now, we're going to have to start with just kind of foundational and fundamentals. So the person I'm talking to today, if you are somebody who is, you're especially if you're the person who's like, I have struggled with weight and eating disorders my entire life. I am in decades now. Stay tuned with me as we go into some of the other experts that I'm going to be bringing in to kind of address some of those. The target audience, the people who I'm hoping are listening today, is, for the most part, maybe you've done a little bit of dieting, you've done some exercise, that kind of thing. But now it hasn't been an obsessive thing. It hasn't been a real problem for you. But here now, you're getting into your 40s, your 50s, maybe even into the 60s, your 60s, and you're like, where did this weight come from? I am just steadily gaining. I have no idea. I'm not changing anything. And especially, it's like the things that used to work, they're not working anymore. If that's you, you're the person I'm talking to. Stay tuned. That's what this is about. I want to explain why this is happening. Why your body is shifting and why you're starting to hold on to weight that you've never had before. First of all, let's hit the easier element of it. That our bodies naturally put on more weight, more fat as we age, again, as a self-preservation mechanism. Our bodies understand we are getting older. It is more likely for us to have different disease processes as we get older. It's easier to get sick as you get older. Your defenses are not as strong. So what does your body do? It likes to layer you with fat and fuel sources. Again, I've talked about this before, but our physiology doesn't understand that we're in the 21st century and that there's people here who could take care of us. And, just because we're laid up, with a severe flu or pneumonia, well, we have resources to get fed. Think about, 100, 200, 300 years ago, if you were out on your own and you got pneumonia and you couldn't get out of bed to go and pick your food and to roll out and make your own bread and to go kill your dinner for that night. I mean, that took a lot of energy. And if you were really sick, you didn't have that and you would starve to death. We're just not in that era anymore. Our food is coming prepackaged. It's as simple as going to the grocery store. They will deliver it to my front door. Uber Eats is right here. You understand what I'm trying to say. Our bodies haven't figured out the changes to our social environment. So it packs on fat. And again, 200, 300 years ago, you probably used it up. So, people just did, people stayed more lean. So, one, just understand that this is a physiological thing that is happening. And yes, we can combat it, uh, but just understanding and awareness of it, and then just an appreciation that your body's just trying to protect you. Now, the thing that I want to talk about today, and what we're really going to zero in, is muscle. Muscle is your metabolism. Most of your metabolism is getting burned up and used up, and those extra calories, that's your muscle is what's churning and burning. And that was what was so high when we were younger. We had these incredibly high metabolisms. We were typically much more muscular when we were younger, and we could eat whatever we wanted, and it would just all get burned up. Especially in the muscle. But here is the problem. As you age, you start to lose muscle. And that is an ongoing process that has a momentum, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And if you don't keep up, so now it's not even one of those things where like you got to just kind of let your daily activities keep you strong and keep you lean. No, you actually have to actively go against this momentum. And it's going to take a lot more than it used to just to maintain a status quo of muscle, much less build. So understanding that to build muscle, okay, again, let's take one step backwards here. You're losing it. If you are over the age of 40, you're losing muscle. If you're losing muscle, you're losing your metabolism. So there's this constant drain on the system. So now you have to work even harder to build muscle. How do we build muscle? It's through resistance training. So that's like weightlifting. It's body weight exercises. There's isometric exercises. Of course, then you get into CrossFit and Pilates and all of these different things. There's a lot of different ways to build muscle, but it all has to come from resistance training. It's not cardio. So a lot of us who imprinted our information, especially during the 80s, we saw a lot of the kind of like Richard Simmons sweating to the oldies kind of things where you're seeing all these people getting on treadmills and they're getting their ellipticals and it's all of this cardio. Cardio is great. Cardio is fantastic. Cardio is great for your heart. It is great for your circulatory system. It's great for your lymphatic system. It's great for your immune system. It is great for your stress. It is great for so many things. It doesn't build muscle. Cardio doesn't build muscle. Cardio actually kind of burns muscle, not build it. Here's an example. Have you ever seen like elite marathon runners? Like the people, not the people at the back of the race, okay? The people who are winning. When you look at them, they are super, super lean. Okay, if you've noticed, I mean, they are thin. All right, now think about this. How many miles, how much they're churning and burning, and their legs are not thick. Their legs are actually kind of, I mean, they're pretty lean. In general, running, for instance, heavy cardio actually kind of burns muscle up. So, like, for instance, whenever you see these bodybuilders, these people who are trying to, win these, different body sculpting competitions and whatnot, they have to be actually really careful about doing like long distance running. They have to be very careful with, you don't see those people typically, doing marathons because it actually burns up the muscle that they're trying to build up. So just understand that cardio is great. Cardio is awesome. I'm a huge fan of cardio. And we think about cardio and we think about burning fat, and I'm trying to burn fat, and so I'm burning calories, and all of that is true. But if you don't have muscle, and if you're over the age of 40, you're starting to lose the race. All right. I work with so many individuals. The majority of the people that I work with one-on-one are over the age of 40. And when they come to me, and it goes without fail, and they're gaining all this weight, they're like, I'm doing all this cardio. I'm walking all the time. I'm always moving. Why am I putting on all this weight? You know who never complains to me? The commonality of the people who are always saying, yeah, yeah, my weight's great. They're the people lifting weights. The people who are consistently like, they have either their at-home gym and they're using it. It's not a laundry rack. The people who are lifting like serious weight, and I'm not talking about the soup cans. Oh my goodness. If I have one more person who tells me I have 2-pound dumbbells and I'm constantly using them, oh, that's a great place to start. Let me stop. If you got to start somewhere, start with your soup cans. Okay, great. But now we have to move to real weight. Um, those people never, I have not had a consultation in I don't know how many years where the person's like, I am in the gym and I am lifting hard. Nothing's happened. I am still 50, 100 pounds overweight. Never happens. Every once in a while, we have the person who's like, I'm trying to shave off that last 5 and whatever. But no. Real off the chart. Yeah, I just don't see it. Can it happen? Sure. I don't see it though. So resistance. It has to be about resistance. Now, here's the other thing I want to really point out. Think about, we just talked about what, like 100, 200 years ago, what your life looked like. What did that look like just to feed you? I mean, you had to go out and kill your dinner. You had to go into the garden. If anybody's done any gardening, it's a lot of work. You had to go into the garden and you had to harvest your food. Just the act of making it. Have you ever rolled out dough? I mean, it's a lot of work kneading it. I mean, you think about like churning butter, just the amount of exercise you went through just to get to the point where you could eat the calories. You're churning and burning it up. How much resistance there was in the act of daily living. So, we just don't have that now. Washing our clothes. We're not beating our trousers up against a rock and wringing them out and carrying this heavy laundry to hang up. I remember that. I do remember that. My mom helping my mom putting the sheets over the clothesline, to dry because it just tore up her dryer and they just weren't up to speed for things that were that heavy. That was a workout. Just doing the laundry. Of course, the cooking and all of the different things that were just to keep you going. Driving a car before power steering and automatic transmissions, it was a workout if you were driving your car, in a city environment. We don't have any of that anymore. You go to the airport, you have people movers. Our luggage has wheels on it. Now, I walk into Walmart and people are in their own carts. Like they have their own mobile carts that they're driving around. We do not have the resistance anymore. It's not built into our society. So when you're looking at it, you're like, well, my parents or my grandparents, especially, people who are, you're kind of in my generation, our grandparents, they didn't get, obese, whatnot. They didn't have the life we have. They weren't parking their car as close as possible to the entrance to the grocery store and then sitting down and driving. They didn't have those things. They had to keep going. Let me just take a quick tangent. Anybody who's traveled abroad, like when you go into like historical European cities, they don't have the handicap accessible nature that you see in the States. And you don't see the obesity rates. You don't see the same level. And it's fascinating when you are walking in, again, one of these historical European cities, and you see somebody who is like 300 pounds, it's just rare. And it was fascinating for us as we were going around, and you would see somebody and then you'd hear them speak. You're like, oh, that's an American. That makes sense. just because their lives have the natural resistance. They're having to walk. There are parking lots right next to everywhere that they want to go to. Not a lot of their buildings don't have elevator systems. You're doing the 3 flights up and down with your groceries. Makes you think a lot harder about how much you buy. They just have all that resistance. We don't have that. So we're going to have to build it in. It's just the way it is. Fair, not fair, whatever. It doesn't matter. It just is. The fact, a lot of us too have come to this mentality of we think about the couch potato. We think about the the people who were heavy when we were younger, like the young people, our peers who were really overweight. Okay. And a lot of them, what was the thing that they had in common? A lot of them, they never moved. It was very, very rare for me to have a friend when I was a child who was extremely overweight, who played all the sports and was constantly on their bike and always out doing things. It just wasn't common. So we mentally attached that sedentary lifestyle. That's how you get fat. Well, here's the problem: is as we get age, just because you're up and you're walking around, that's just not enough. It's just not enough to keep up with the deterioration of your muscle mass. So when you're looking at this again, the key thing I got to emphasize, some of you are like, yeah, I know this. I just need to get back. The key thing is don't get hurt. That is the process that I run into with so many individuals when we're starting this, is they're like, yes, that's it. That's the motivation I needed. I know this to be true. When I was doing CrossFit, I was in the best shape of my life. Whenever I was working with that trainer, I felt amazing. I looked amazing. That was when I was most proud of myself. I know I need to go back there. The key is start slow, because I run into this is the hang up. They go in too hard, too fast. It's been 5 years. It's been 10 years, and they get hurt. And now you're laid up for 6 weeks, 12 weeks. God forbid you have to get surgery because you really did a number. Don't get hurt. If you're going to dive into the deep end of the pool, make sure you have somebody watching you. If you're going to go do CrossFit, have them help you get acclimated. If you're going to start lifting weights, at least start with a trainer. Have somebody who's monitoring you, because even things like with weightlifting, where you get injured is because your posture has changed and you're not as centered and balanced as maybe you were at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago. And one of the things is again, if you are not centered and balanced in your frame, it's super easy to, maybe not on day one, but a couple weeks in, for that imbalance to just snap something. So you want to have somebody who's watching you, monitoring your posture, make sure that you're keeping everything where you're supposed to be, and it's just incredibly valuable because we don't see it. I mean, even if you're looking in the mirror, if you don't know what you're looking for, you're likely to miss it. So do get some help. I can't encourage you enough, because an injury, it's going to set you back, and then who knows when you're going to be able to get started again. Another thing, BMI. I hate BMI. I'm going to tell you right now, especially if you're over the age of 40, just forget about the BMI. But what I am a huge fan of, there's a lot of these various scans out now that can tell you how you're holding onto your muscle mass. One of my favorites, and this is just the one that I see so much, is called InBody. A lot of your gyms, a lot of your nutrition stores, a lot of places have these machines, and then they give you these readouts. I've got this one right here in front of me. So as opposed to looking at your scale and okay, I want to get that scale. I wanted that scale to read 10 pounds or 20 pounds less. How about this? Shift your mindset from I want to get my muscle up and I want to get my fat down. If you're doing that, you are doing so much more for your health. You are doing so much more for who you are. Because again, visceral fat, the fat that's around our organs, that's the stuff that really causes disease. When we're talking about obesity, getting that down is such a huge part of your longevity. And I love a lot of these scans will tell you where your visceral fat is. So, and a lot of you who listen to me, you are the ambitious people. You are not the people who are couch potatoes and like, oh, I should get up and move. Wow, never heard of that before. I mean, you're the people who you just need a little bit of prompting and spin, wind you up, and you're off to the races. That's just how you're wired. And so, if we just change your focus from trying to manipulate that scale to shifting the entire composition of your body to more muscle, less fat, and let the scale say what the scale is going to say, because muscle does weigh more. And we know this. I have figured this out. If for me to stay in the size range I want to be, I'm going to have to weigh more than I did 20 years ago because I need more muscle in order to maintain the life that I want to live. And so, yeah, the scale may never say that really low number that I so identified with whenever I was young. Okay, if I weighed 100 pounds in high school, well, congratulations. That 100 pounds on me today is not a healthy place. I need more weight. I need more muscle. And there's a percentage of fat that we do need. A lot of us could do with less than what we have. So use those. So for those of you who just need to shift a perspective, use the InBody scans. You go in every 3, 4, 6 weeks, get retested and make sure you're going in those right directions. Now, as we kind of round out this conversation, I have to address the elephant that has become huge in this space of weight loss, and that is these weight loss pills, these weight loss shots now, and these diabetes medications that are being used for weight loss. Here is my after school special warning. How those things work is they decrease your appetite. They make you feel fuller faster, and you don't feel as hungry. So as long as you stop putting, if you don't feel hungry or you feel full, you're less likely to eat, and ergo, you lose weight. We've seen people who've dropped a lot of weight. I guarantee everybody who's watching this or listening to this, you're like, oh yeah, I know somebody's lost 50 pounds. I mean, they dropped a lot. And that whole get rich quick, take a pill and it'll all be better mentality. Man, we all love it, right? We all love that idea that something that easy, something that simple can get us to our goals. Okay, here's the issue. Sure, that makes you feel, and let me back one step up. I'm sorry. Let me just back one step up and say that if you are morbidly obese, I'm okay with getting a jump start, however you need to get your jump start. Okay. I really am not like overtly opposed to getting going whatever way we need to get things going, because we have to get some kind of momentum going. It might, universally opposed to these shots, to these pills, not necessarily. Okay, for the rest of us. And again, the majority of the people who I'm talking to, you're not morbidly obese. You've been doing the work, you've been following, you've been eating right. So you're more talking about 10, 20, maybe 50 pounds. That's the majority of who. Here's when you aren't eating, what happens, especially again, as you're over 40, your body goes into this survival mechanism. And what happens is it will start burning your muscle, not necessarily your fat, in order for a survival mechanism. muscle is a very ready source of fuel. And if you're just depriving the body and not getting it the nutrients it needs, which that's what the majority of people do, it's not like they go and now they're eating this perfectly healthy, perfectly proportioned diet, and they're getting exactly the right amount of calories that they always needed. And then they're fueling with the best of the greens and the most pure of the proteins. No, they're eating the way they were eating before. They're just eating less of it. Now they're burning off their muscle. And that's why so many of the people that look really gaunt. It's because, again, they're just losing the muscle that keeps up the frame. And the problem here is you're over 40, you're already losing muscle. Now you're losing muscle at a rapid rate. At some point, you're going to come off of this thing. At some point, you're not going to be taking these shots. And then what? Now you have no muscle left, or you've wasted away a huge portion of your muscle. What are you going to do then? What kind of shape are you going to be in? What have you done to yourself? And where are you going to go from here? Do you know how hard it is to rebuild, even just from the natural progression of losing muscle? Now you've actively depleted it. I mean, it's just, I mean, here's the thing is at some point we're going to end up right back here where you got to build muscle. So here's my perspective on those. Try this first. Prove to yourself that with a basic diet, with building muscle, prove to yourself that that doesn't work before you go take and you start hitting the easy button. Prove to yourself that there is no other way. And then maybe consider it. You also may want to listen to part 2 of this as we get into the next level of what it is that the other reasons why people hold on to fat or why people don't lose weight. In part 2, I'm going to get into the underlying disease processes that have virtually no symptoms except for gaining weight, and how your biomarkers can indicate that some of this weight gain may be because of an emergent disease process. Furthermore, we will get into the impacts of stress, fight or flight, cortisol, and how all of those things impact how your body will and will not release fat. Muscle is still going to be the core, and that's why I start here. But there are some very, very serious underlying factors that also can be contributing. A lot of times when it comes to weight, it's not just one thing. And that's why you've been struggling with it, because if it was obvious, you would have done it already. If it was as simple as, lowering your calories, that so be it. If it was as simple as going for a walk, so be it. It's not. One last point, and this is probably the most encouraging thing I'm going to say this entire podcast for a lot of you, is that when I'm talking about building muscle and when I'm talking about what it takes, I am not talking about hours and hours a day in the gym. And now, because I can hear the collective moans and groans of, I don't have time for this. The average individual, so I worked with a trainer who we just worked 3 days a week for 30 minutes each. So an hour and a half a week, just 30 minutes. And he showed me in that process, he's like, if you're spending an hour at the gym, you're actually wasting a whole lot of time. If you just get to it and get after it, it does not take hours and hours and hours and hours for the average person. I'm not talking about the person who's trying to win a bodybuilding competition. For the average person who just wants to be fit, lean, trim, it doesn't take that much time. And actually, a dear friend and an incredible physician once told me that, like, really 15 minutes a day, 15 targeted minutes. And he took me through his workout. Now, I will tell you, it's an intense 15 minutes, but just 15 minutes a day. And he doesn't go to the gym, does it all at home. All at home, that simple, 15 minutes a day, and maintains an incredible lean muscle mass and a very, very, very low percentage body weight, well past the age of 40, much less well past the age of 50. It can be done, and it can be incredibly practical. I mean, really, any of us who say, I don't have 15 minutes a day, we're kind of kidding ourselves, aren't we? So I do have just so much encouragement that it can be done. It can be done at any age, on any budget, at any point, if you are willing. So stay tuned. We'll be getting into part 2. I am Dr. Jay Hitson, and this is the Longevity Lab. Well, that's it for today's episode of the Longevity Lab. If this conversation resonated with you, make sure to subscribe so you'll be the first to know when we launch part 2, where we'll dive even deeper into the hidden factors behind weight struggles. We got to talk about hormones. We've got to talk about stress. We got to talk about metabolic shifts. And we'll break down the real strategies to help you get more moving forward. But this podcast isn't about what I think is important. It's about what you need answers to. So what are you struggling with when it comes to health? What questions do you have that nobody seems to be answering? Leave a comment, send me a message, share your thoughts, because the more I know about your biggest challenges, the better we can bring you clear, real-world answers that will actually make a difference. Thank you for listening. Subscribe now, drop in your questions, and let's keep this conversation going. I'll see you next time.